And welcome to Promotion Exam Study Made Easy, where the method of study is simplified. You don't need to carry books around or stress your eyes all day reading through book. All you need to do is just to lie down comfortably and be playing it. You play it over and over and you get to master it. So in our training, we first do the training and after that we follow it up with quiz. So in our previous episodes, we treated everything about the public service rule, all topics of public service rule from chapter 1 to 17, all completed and uploaded. Then we now went into education. So under education, we are looking at theory of learning. So we actually started with theory of learning because one of our subscribers requested that we should do a video on theories of learning and the philosophy of education. So we started with theory of learning. So in the first video on education, we treated the introduction, that is theory of learning, introduction to the theory of learning, the meaning of learning, and we went to consider the various theories by various educationists. So we saw that of classical conditioning by Pavlov, and we also saw that of B.F. Kennedy, that is operant conditioning theory, and we also treated the trial and error learning theory by Edward Thorndike. So in this video, we shall be looking at another theory of learning. But before we proceed, if you are yet to subscribe to this channel, kindly hit the subscribe button. Just look around your screen. If you see the subscribe button, kindly hit on it. Why do you have to do that? Is for you to have our materials, for YouTube to be able to bring our materials to your page. It does not cost you a dime. All our materials are free. So but once you click on that subscribe button, anytime we upload a new training video like this, or even the previously uploaded one, YouTube will be able to notify you that of their availability and you have access to them. That is just the essence of hitting the subscribe button. So the previous ones, YouTube will bring them to your page. Any new one, YouTube will notify you. So in YouTube, click the search button, then type Salmul, S-A-L-M-U-L. Then YouTube will make our materials available to you. So in this video, we shall be looking at cognitive development theory. Cognitive development theory by Jean Piaget. So quickly, if you are coming across the video for the first time or you're a returning viewer yet to subscribe, kindly hit the subscribe button so that all our materials will be made available to you. So this is the fourth theory of learning we are considering. So that is the cognitive development theory by Jean Piaget. So between 1896 to 1980. So the overview of Jean Piaget theory. So Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist. He is best known for developing the theory of cognitive development. So he believed that children are active learners. They are not passive recipients of information. So cognitive development occurs through a series of universal stages. So intelligence develops as children continually adapt to their environment. So Piaget described children as little scientists because they constantly explore, experiment, and learn from experience. His theory emphasized mental processes involved in learning. He believed that learners actively construct knowledge through interaction with their environment. The theory describes cognitive development as a progression through 4 distinct stages, where children's thinking becomes progressively more advanced and announced. So cognitive development definition. Cognitive development refers to the growth of mental processes involved in thinking, learning, remembering, the problem solving, reasoning, decision making, understanding the world. Let me take it again. So Cognitive development refers to the growth of mental processes involved in thinking, learning, remembering, problem solving, reasoning, decision making, understanding the world. According to Piaget, intelligence develops through adaptation. Children are always trying to make sense of new experiences. So, basic assumptions of Piaget's theory. Piaget believed that children actively construct knowledge. So children learn through exploration, observation, experimentation, interaction. Then learning is not simply receiving information from adults. Then 2, cognitive development occurs in stages. So development follows 4 universal stages. Each stage has different thinking abilities, unique characteristics, delimitations, and children cannot skip stages. So the development follows the same order. So although children develop at different speeds, everyone passes through the stages in the same sequence. So that is Piaget belief. Then children learn through adaptation. Adaptation means adjusting thinking to fit new experiences. This occurs through assimilation, accommodation. Then schemas. Schemas are mental frameworks or mental structures that organize knowledge about the world. They help us understand situations, interpret experiences, predict what will happen, solve problems. Schemas become more complex as children gain experience. Examples: infant schema, sucking. Infant normally they suck. Then the infant sucks bottle. The infant sucks bottle. They suck mother's breast. They suck their thumb. They suck toys. In fact, anything they grab, they suck, etc. So toddler schema. Then we have the dog scheme. So initially, all 4-legged animals are called dogs. So the toddler see everything that has 4 legs, or every animal, because he's the dog. They first get to know, as dog is a house pet. So they first get to know dog. So knowing dog, every other animal they see that has 4 legs, they will refer to the animal as dog. So all 4-legged animals are called dogs. Then later, the child learns the difference between dog, cat, goat, sheep, etc. So much later, they now know the difference between the 4-legged animals. So at the beginning, once they know dog, so every animal is dog to them. But with time, they get to know the different animals, so they can now differentiate between dog, cat, goat, sheep, etc. So the schema becomes more accurate. Then we have adult schema. So adults have also schemas. Examples: driving, cooking, banking, studying. These schemas continue developing throughout life. So characteristics of schemas. Schemas organize knowledge, change with experience, become increasingly complex, guide future behavior. Then the adaptation. Piaget believed intelligence develops through adaptation. Adaptation helps children fit into their environment. It has 2 processes. So it has the assimilation, it has the accommodation. So these work together continuously. Then the assimilation. Assimilation occurs when new information fits into an existing schema. Then no major change in thinking is required. So example, a child knows dogs. The child sees a wolf. The child says dog. That means the child calls the wolf dog. Then the child is using the existing dog schema. Then example 2. A baby knows how to suck a bottle. The baby sucks a spoon. The sucking schema is being applied to something new. Key point: assimilation adds new experience to existing knowledge. Then accommodation. Accommodation occurs when existing schemas no longer explain new information. The child must modify an old schema or create a new one. Example: a child thinks all flying animals are birds. Then the child sees a bat. The parent explains it is an animal, so it is a mammal. Okay. The child sees a bat. The parent explains it is a mammal. The child changes the schema. Now, birds are not bats. Then accommodation has occurred. Then another example: initially, all four-legged animals are dogs. Later, child learns dog, cat, goat, horse. So now he learns the different animals. New schemas are formed. Difference between assimilation and accommodation. So assimilation, accommodation. So assimilation fits new information into existing one, while the accommodation changes existing schema. Then assimilation, existing knowledge remains the same, while in accommodation, existing knowledge changes. Then in assimilation, easier process. Then accommodation, more complex process. Then for assimilation, no restructuring, while accommodation requires restructuring. So we have equilibrium. Equilibrium is a state of mental balance. The child's understanding matches what they observe. Everything makes sense. They will not have this equilibrium. This equilibrium occurs when new experiences cannot be explained using existing schemas. The child experiences confusion. So example, a child believes tall glass contains more liquid. Teacher pours the same water into short, wide glass. Child becomes confused. This confusion is called disequilibrium. Then we have equilibration. Equilibration is a process that restores mental balance. So equilibration restores mental balance. So steps: child experiences confusion, that is disequilibrium. Then child modifies thinking, that is accommodation. Then new understanding develops, then equilibrium is restored. Then example of equilibration. Step 1, child believes tall glasses has more juice. Then teacher pours juice into a taller but narrower glass. Child says there is more juice. Teacher pours it back. Child notices amount never change. Child changes thinking. New understanding: height alone does not determine quantity, but height and width matter. This new understanding restores equilibrium. Piaget considered equilibrium the driving force of cognitive development because it motivates children to revise their thinking and build more advanced mental structure. Piaget considered equilibration the driving force of cognitive development because it motivates children to revise their thinking and build more advanced mental structures. That is equilibration. So example of equilibration. Step 1, child believes taller glass has more liquid. Then teacher pours juice into a taller but narrower glass. Child says there is more juice. Teacher pours it back. Child notices Amount never changed. Child changes thinking. New understanding. Height alone does not determine quantity. Both height and width matter. This new understanding restores equilibrium. Then we have organization. Piaget believed children naturally organize knowledge into increasingly complex mental systems. Organization helps children connect ideas together. Example, a child first learns numbers, later combines counting, addition, subtraction, etc. Knowledge becomes integrated into a larger cognitive system. Then invariant functions. Piaget believed all children possess two basic cognitive functions. We have the organization, that is arranging knowledge into systems. Then we have adaptation, changing thinking through assimilation and accommodation. These processes operate throughout life. Then we have the summary table. So the concept and their meaning. So concept, then schema is a mental framework for understanding the world. Adaptation is adjusting to new experiences. Then assimilation is adding new information to existing schemas. Then accommodation is changing schemas to fit new information. Then equilibrium is mental balance. Then disequilibrium is cognitive conflict or confusion. Then equilibration is restoring balance through accommodation. Then organization is arranging knowledge into connected system. So we have stages of cognitive development. The 4 stages of cognitive development. We have co-idea. Piaget believed that every child passes through 4 universal stages of cognitive development in the same order. Although the rate of development may vary, the sequence of stages does not. Each stage represents a qualitative change in the way children think and understand the world. So we have the overview of Piaget's 4 stages. We have stage, age, and main feature. So the sensory motor stage. The sensory motor stage is the age from birth to 2 years. Then the main feature is learning through senses and actions. Then we have the pre-operational stage. So the pre-operational stage is the age from 2 to 7 years. And then of course the main feature there is symbolic thinking develops, but thinking is still illogical. Then we have the concrete operational stage, which is from age 7 to 11 years. So, and the main feature is logical thinking about concrete objects and events. Then we have formal operational, which is 11 years and above, from 11 years and above for formal operational. And the main feature is abstract, hypothetical, and scientific thinking. So starting with the sensory motor stage, that is the age from birth to 2 years. So this is the first stage of cognitive development. Infants learn through their senses and actions, understand the world through seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, moving. That is through their senses and movement. The knowledge develops through physical interaction with the environment. Then characteristics. 1. Learning through senses and movement. Babies learn by looking, touching, grasping, sucking, crawling, walking. Then everything is explored physically. So developing key concepts like object permanence, the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they can't be seen. E.g., baby cries when you hide a toy behind back, but shares when it reappears because they now know it did not vanish. They learn using body sense, look, grab, and suck on things. So we have the reflex actions. So at birth, behavior is dominated by reflexes. Examples: sucking, grasping, blinking. This gradually becomes intentional actions. Then you have number 3, goal-directed behavior. As babies develop, they begin acting with purpose. Example: a baby pushes a chair to reach a toy. This shows intentional problem solving. Then we have the trial and error learning. Infants learn by experimenting. Example: a baby repeatedly drops a spoon from a high chair to observe what happens. This repeated action helps them understand cause and effect. So we have development of object permanence. Object permanence is the understanding that objects continue to exist even when they cannot be seen, heard, or touched. This is one of Piaget's most important concepts. Example: a toy is hidden under a blanket. The young infant believes the toy has disappeared, while the older infant searches under the blanket. This demonstrates object permanence. Importance of object permanence. It shows that children can now form mental representations, remember objects, understand permanence, think beyond immediate perception. Then educational activities. Teachers and parents should encourage peek-a-boo, that is, helps children understand object permanence. Hide and seek with toys. Hide toys under clothes. Encourage babies to find them. The sensory play. Examples: water play, sand play, play-doh, different textures, etc. Then we have imitation games. Children imitate parents, teachers, and siblings. Then imitation strengthens learning. The summary of sensory stage. So the summary of sensory motor stage. So learn through senses, then learn through movement, develop object permanence, begin intentional actions, then explore the world physically. So these are the summary of sensory motor stage. Then going into this second stage of development, stage 2 of development, that is pre-operational stage. The pre-operational stage is from 2 years to 7 years. Then symbolic thinking emerges at this age. Children start using symbols, pictures, imagination, and language, but struggle with logical thinking. So at this point, they can at least understand symbol, pictures. So they can use language, they can use pictures, they can do some imaginations, but not logical thinking. Then the challenge: they may be egocentric, meaning they find it difficult to see things from others' perspectives or from anyone else's point of view. They do lots of pretend play. Then the real world: a child might hide by covering his eyes, thinking that if he cannot see you, you cannot see him as well. The major characteristics: you have the symbolic thought. So children use the object to represent another. Example: a stick becomes a sword, a box becomes a car, a banana becomes a telephone. This is called symbolic play. So this is for the pre-operational stage. They also have rapid language development. Vocabulary increases dramatically. child begin asking many questions, telling stories, naming objects, communicating ideas. Language becomes an important tool for expressing thoughts. Then egocentrism. Egocentrism means difficulty seeing situations from another person's point of view. It does not mean selfishness. Rather, the child naturally assumes that others see, think, and feel exactly as they do. Then three mountain stacks. Piaget demonstrated egocentrism using the 3 mountain stacks. The child views a model of 3 mountains. They are asked, what does the person sitting opposite you see? Young children usually describe their own view instead of the other person's. This indicates that they cannot yet take another person's perspective. Then we have centration. Centration focuses on one aspect of a situation while ignoring other important aspects. Example, 2 glasses contain equal amounts of water. Water from one glass is poured into a tall, thin glass. Child says the tall glass has more water. The child focuses only on height, which is ignored. That is centration. The lack of conversation. Conversation is the understanding that quantity remains the same even when appearance changes. Children in this stage do not yet understand conservation. Types of conservation. We have liquid conservation, same amount of water, different shaped glasses. Child thinks taller glass contains more. They will have number conservation. 2 equal rows of coins. 1 row is spread apart. Child says the longer row has more coins. Then we have the mass conservation. 1 ball of clay rolled into a sausage shape. Child thinks there is more clay. Then we have the volume conservation. Water poured into different containers. Child believes quantity changes. Then we have the irreversibility. Children cannot mentally reverse actions. Example, they cannot imagine pouring the water back into the original glass to see that the amount is unchanged. Then we have the animism. Children believe non-living things have feelings or intentions. Example, the sun is following me. My doll is sad. The chair hurt me. Then we have artificialism. Children believe people made natural things. Example, who made the moon? Who painted the sky blue? Then we have intuitive thinking. Children ask many wise questions. Intuitive thinking. Children ask many why questions. However, answers are often based on intuition rather than logic. Example, why does it rain? Because the clouds are crying. Educational implications. Teachers should use pictures and concrete materials. Encourage pretend play. Use role playing activities. Allow drawing and storytelling. Avoid teaching highly abstract concepts. Use demonstrations instead of verbal explanations only. Then classroom activities. Recommended activities include pretend play, e.g. kitchen, hospital, market. Then drawing and painting, building with blocks, symbol games, perspective taking activities, e.g. asking children what another child can see. Then hands-on exploration with objects and materials. Then summary of pre-operational stage. Children use symbols, develop language rapidly, engage in pretend play, show egocentrism, cannot conserve quantity, focus on the future at a time, there is centration, think intuitively rather than logically. Then we have the third stage. So the third stage of Piaget development, that is a concrete operational stage. So the concrete operational stage is from age 7 to 11 years. So at this point, children become more logical in their thinking, develop logical thinking, but mainly about concrete objects, real and tangible, observable things or situations. Understanding of conservation. They can understand concepts like conservation, realizing that quantity doesn't change even if the appearance of an object does. Understanding that changing a shape does not change the amount, e.g., a child knows that a short white cup holds same amount of milk as a tall skinny cup. They also begin to think about others' thoughts and feelings more realistically. They can solve problems involving objects they can see or manipulate, but abstract ideas remain difficult. The major characteristics. Conservation. Children now understand that quantity remains the same despite changes in appearance. They succeed on liquid conservation, number conservation, mass conservation, and volume conservation. Then we have decentration. Decentration. Children consider more than one aspect of a problem at the same time. Example, they recognize that although one glass is taller, it is also narrower. They will have reversibility. Children can mentally reverse actions. Example, if the water is poured back into the original glass, the amount will still be the same. They will have classification. Children can group objects according to shared characteristics. Examples, color, shape, size, function. They can also classify using multiple characteristics at once. Then we have seriation. Children can arrange objects in order. Example, shortest to tallest, smallest to biggest, lightest to heaviest. Then logical thinking. Children can solve logical problems involving real life situations. However, they still struggle with abstract or hypothetical reasoning. They will have reduced egocentrism. Children become better at understanding another person's viewpoint. They begin to decenter, considering multiple perspectives and aspects of a situation. Then educational implications. Teachers should use experiments, encourage classification exercise, use mathematics manipulatives, teach through observation and practical demonstrations, introduce logical reasoning using real objects. Then classroom activities. Piaget recommends classification tasks, basic science experiments, e.g., baking soda and vinegar volcano, board games and puzzles, conservation demonstrations using different shape containers. Summary of concrete operational stage. So children think logically about real objects, understand conservation, can classify and seriate, can reverse mental operations, can consider multiple aspects of a problem. So that takes us to stage 4. The stage 4 of development. So that is the formal operational stage, and that is from 11 years and above. The formal operational stage. So this is the highest stage of cognitive development. Adolescents can think abstractly, hypothetically, scientifically, systematically. Abstract reasoning. children develop the ability to think abstractly and solve hypothetical problems. They can now reason about complex concepts like ethics, science, and mathematics, thinking systematically, forming hypotheses, and use what-if scenarios. Major characteristics. Abstract thinking. Individuals can think about ideas that are not directly observable. Example, justice, freedom, democracy, morality. 2. Hypothetical reasoning. They can consider possibilities and what-if scenarios. Example, what will happen if gravity disappeared? Then hypothetical thinking. Problem-solving abilities. Deductive reasoning. They can use a general rule to solve a specific problem, e.g., one in this stage can understand complex, invisible ideas like morality, justice, and how to plan for the future. Then scientific thinking. Individuals can develop hypotheses, test ideas, evaluate evidence, draw conclusions. Then deductive reasoning. They can move from general principles to specific conclusions using logic. Then advanced problem solving. They can solve complex problems that require integrating information from different areas. Then educational implications. Teachers should introduce algebra and advanced mathematics, encourage debates and discussions, use ethical dilemmas, promote hypothesis testing, ask open-ended questions such as, how did you reach this conclusion? What evidence supports your answer? Then classroom activities. Recommended activities include hypothesis testing experiments, debates, discussions on abstract issues, complex problem-solving tasks, feedback through open-ended questioning rather than simply checking for the correct answer. Summary of formal operational stage. So, the summary of this stage now, the formal operational stage. Individuals think abstractly, reason scientifically, test hypotheses, solve complex problems, consider multiple possibilities. So, comparing the four stages now, comparing the Piaget's four stages of development. So you have this, the stage, the age, the main cognitive ability, then the major limitations. So for the stage, sensory motor, for the sensory motor stage, that is age from birth to 0 to 2 years. So the main cognitive ability is learning through senses and movement, and the major limitation is that no symbolic thought initially. Then for the pre-operational stage, which ranges from 2 years to 7 years, then the main cognitive ability is symbolic thinking and language. Then the major limitation, egocentrism, centration, lack of conservation. Then for the concrete operational stage, age 7 to 11 years, then logical thinking about concrete events, that is the main cognitive ability. Then limitation, difficulty with abstract concepts. Then for the formal operational stage, that is from age 11 years and above, so the main cognitive ability is abstract and hypothetical reasoning. Then the major limitation, not all individuals consistently reach or use this level in every context, according to the document's discussion of later research. So for educational applications of Piaget's theory, Piaget believed that education should match the child's stage of cognitive development. Main principle: children should not be taught concepts beyond their level of thinking. For example, a child in the concrete operational stage should learn through real objects and practical experiences. Abstract ideas like algebra or atomic structure are not appropriate for young primary school children because they have not yet reached the formal operational stage. Then why Piaget's theory matters in education? Piaget believed that Learning is an active process. Children learn best through discovery. Knowledge cannot simply be transferred from teacher to learner. Teachers should create situations that encourage exploration and thinking. They will have principles for effective teaching according to Piaget. It outlines 8 important teaching principles. You have principle 1. Teach according to the child's stage of development. Lessons should match children's cognitive abilities. Example, a child in the concrete operational stage should learn fractions. Then using blocks, counters, bits, coins, rather than abstract mathematical formulas. Then principle 2, provide concrete experiences before abstract concepts. Children understand ideas better when they first experience them physically. Example, instead of explaining volume theoretically, allow students to pour water, compare containers, measure liquids before introducing formal definitions. Principle 3, create challenges without causing frustration. Teachers should present problems that are challenging, interesting, achievable. This creates disequilibrium, encouraging children to modify their thinking and learn. Then principle 4, focus on the learning process rather than only correct answers. Teachers should ask, how did you solve it? Why did you think that? Can you explain your reasoning? Understanding how children think is more important than simply checking whether the answer is correct. Principle 5, encourage active learning discovery. That is discovery learning. Children should investigate, explore, experiment, discover knowledge rather than memorizing facts. Examples include science experiments, investigations, project, practical activities. Principle 6, encourage social interaction. Although Piaget emphasized independent learning, Piaget recommends collaborative activities because children also learn from one another. Examples, group discussions, teamwork, collaborative problem solving, role playing. Then principle 7, differentiate teaching. Children develop at different rates. Teachers should observe each learner, adjust activities to their abilities, gradually increase difficulty. Then example, a child who can sort objects by color may later be asked to sort by size, shape at the same time. Then principle 8, support children's natural curiosity, spontaneous research. Teachers should encourage children to explore topics that genuinely interest them. Example, create a wonder wall where children post questions they would like to investigate. The summary of Piaget's teaching principles. Teachers should teach according to developmental stage, begin with concrete experiences, present appropriate challenges, focus on reasoning, encourage discovery learning, promote collaboration, differentiate instruction, support curiosity. Then we have classroom activities for each developmental stage. So A, the sensory motor stage. Recommended activities, object performance games. Example, peek-a-boo, hiding toys under blankets. Purpose, develop understanding that objects continue to exist even when out of sight. They will have the sensory play. Example, water play, sandy play, play-doh. The purpose is to stimulate sensory exploration. They will have the imitation. Children imitate adults. For example, waving, clapping, brushing hair, pretending to cook. The purpose is to develop new skills through observation. They will have the pre-operational stage, that is the age 2 to 7 years. Recommended activities, role play. Example, hospital, market, kitchen, school. The purpose is to develop symbolic thinking. Then symbol activities. Children use drawing, models, toys to represent real objects. Then hands-on learning. Examples, building blocks, puzzles, painting, clay modeling. The purpose is learning through physical interaction. They will have the perspective-taking activities. Example, 2 children sit opposite each other. Teacher asks, what does your friend see? Purpose is to reduce egocentrism. So we now have the stage 7 to 11 years. That is the concrete operational stage. So classification tasks. Students group objects according to color, shape, size, function, science, experiments. The examples, baking soda, volcano, plant growth, magnet experiments. The purpose is to develop logical reasoning. Then logical games. Examples, board game, strategy game, logic puzzles. Then we have the conservation activities. Example, differentiate shape containers holding equal amount of water. The purpose is to demonstrate conservation of quantity. So now we have the formal operational stage, that is 11 years and above. Hypothesis testing. Students make predictions, conduct investigations, evaluate evidence, then abstract thinking activities. Example, ethical issues, philosophy, algebra, environmental debates, problem-solving activities. Students solve complex real-world problems using knowledge from multiple subjects. Then debate and discussion. Encourage students to defend ideas using evidence and logical arguments. Then open-ended questioning. Instead of asking, is your answer correct? Ask why, how. So what evidence supports your answer? These questions promote higher order thinking. Then we have the individual differences in learning. Piaget stage provide a general framework, but not all children develop in exactly the same way. He emphasizes that cognitive development is also influenced by social identity and life experience. So race and teacher interactions. Teacher expectations may influence children's opportunities to learn. Examples include different expectations, unequal encouragement, biased assumptions. Then these factors can affect confidence and cognitive development. So racial and cultural stereotypes may affect self-confidence, classroom participation, academic performance. Children who internalize stereotypes may engage less confidently with certain subjects. Gender and peer interactions. Peers influence children's interests. Examples, boys discouraged from girls' games. Girls excluded from certain activities. Such experiences may shape opportunities for learning and cognitive engagement. The language. Children who speak multiple languages may experience learning differently. Language influences thinking, understanding, symbolic representation. Different languages and cultural experiences can shape how children process concepts. Then the key point. Piaget's theory should be applied with cultural sensitivity. Recognize that development is influenced by culture, language, gender, race, educational opportunities. They will have challenges in implementing Piagetian teaching. Several practical challenges identified. A. Balancing play and curriculum. Teachers must ensure play has clear learning objectives. Play should support curriculum goal rather than being unstructured free time. B. Curriculum demands. Schools often expect students to master content at specific ages. This may pressure teachers to move ahead before some learners are developmentally ready. Then C. Pace of learning. Children develop at different rates. Teachers should regularly assess understanding and provide additional support or challenge where needed. Then we have assessment. Standardized testing emphasizes correct answers. Piaget emphasized understanding thinking processes rather than simply measuring outcomes. Then Piaget recommends assessment that allows students to demonstrate understanding in multiple ways. Then parents. Some parents believe play-based learning is less rigorous than traditional instruction. Teachers should explain why play matters, how children learn through play, how parents can reinforce learning at home. Then other challenges. Individual differences. One classroom may include learners with widely varying developmental levels. Teachers must adapt instruction while maintaining active, play-based learning. Time constraints. Teachers often face pressure to complete the syllabus, prepare students for examinations. This can reduce opportunities for discovery learning. Then cultural sensitivity. Piaget's idea may need to be adapted to fit different cultural contexts rather than being applied rigidly. Then applying Piaget's theory to children with special educational needs and disabilities. Piaget's ideas can be adapted for children with special needs, special education needs and disability, provided instruction is individualized. Then recommendation 1. Individualized learning. Teaching should be based on strength, interest, developmental level rather than assuming all children follow the same timetable. Recommendation 2. Concrete learning experiences. Use real objects, multisensory materials, practical activities. This is especially beneficial for learners with sensory or learning difficulties. Recommendation 3. Gradual scaffolding. Teachers should break tasks into smaller steps, provide support, gradually reduce assistance as competence increases. Recommendation 4. Flexible assessment. Assessment should be adapted to suit different abilities, communication methods, learning needs. Use multiple ways for children to demonstrate understanding. The recommendation 5. Strengths-based approach. Focus on what children can do rather than on their limitations. Build learning around existing cognitive strengths. Recommendation 6. Interdisciplinary collaboration. Combining Piaget's idea with expertise from professionals such as occupational therapists, speech-language pathologists to support children with special education needs and development effectively. Important conclusion on special education needs and development. Piaget's theory is valuable but emphasizes that it should form part of a broader evidence-based approach to supporting learners with special needs rather than being used in isolation. Key revision points. Students should remember that Piaget believed teachers should match teaching to developmental stages. Use concrete experiences before abstract ideas. Encourage active discovery learning. Focus on reasoning process, not just correct answers. promote social interaction and collaborative learning, differentiate instruction for individual learners, then foster children's curiosity through exploration, then adapt teaching for cultural diversity and special education needs. Then Piaget's theory in digital age, social media and digital learning. Piaget lived long before the internet and social media, but many of his ideas can still be applied to today's technology-rich learning environments. Modern technologies include internet, blogs, wikis, social media, massive open online courses, generative AI. These technologies allow learners to explore information independently, collaborate with others, construct knowledge actively. This aligns with Piaget's constructivist view of learning. Benefits of social media in learning. Social media supports Piaget's theory because it, one, encourages active learning. Students do not only receive information, they ask questions, share ideas, create content, discuss concepts. Learning becomes interactive. 2, promotes assimilation and accommodation. Students constantly encounter new ideas. They may fit new information into existing knowledge, that is assimilation, or change previous ideas, that is accommodation. Then 3, encourages collaboration. Social media allows students to learn through discussions, teamwork, shared projects, peer feedback. This complements Piaget's emphasis on knowledge construction. 4, supports inclusive learning. Digital platforms can reduce barriers caused by geographical distance, socio-economic status, race. More learners can access educational opportunities. Challenges of social media. Limitations. Some teachers hesitate because of technological complexity, distractions, classroom management concerns. Therefore, technology should be used purposefully rather than simply for entertainment. Conclusion. Social media supports Piaget's constructivist philosophy when used intentionally. Students actively construct knowledge through interaction rather than passive listening. Then weaknesses. Criticism of Piaget's theory. Although Piaget transformed developmental psychology, many researchers have criticized aspects of his work. Then criticism of his research methods. 1, over-reliance on verbal responses. Many of Piaget's experiments require children to explain their thinking verbally. Problem. Young children may understand concepts but lack the language skills to explain them. Then the result. Their cognitive abilities may have been underestimated. Then 2, artificial tasks. Many experimental tasks were unfamiliar. Examples: conservation experiments, abstract reasoning tasks. Critics argue that children often perform better in familiar, everyday situations. Then 3, confusing instructions. Some tasks were difficult for young children to understand. When researchers simplified instructions, children often perform much better. This suggests that poor performance may have reflected misunderstanding rather than lack of ability. Then researcher bias. Piaget conducted much of his research himself. He also studied his own children. This raises concerns about subjectivity, observer bias, limited liability. Then sample size. Then number 5, small sample size. Most participants were European, middle class, relatively affluent. Therefore, findings may not represent all children worldwide. Then criticism of the theory itself. Fixed developmental stages. Piaget believed children move through distinct stages. Later, psychologists argued that development is more gradual, more continuous, less rigid. Modern developmental psychology generally views cognitive growth as more variable than Piaget originally proposed. Formal operational stage is not universal. Research suggests many adolescents and adults never consistently demonstrate formal operational thinking in all situations. Therefore, reaching this stage is not guaranteed. Then, underestimation of children's abilities. Later studies show children often develop important abilities earlier than Piaget believed. Example, object permanence. Piaget, around 8 to 9 months. Later research that Lagion and Dovos. Evidence suggested infants as young as 4 months showed signs of object permanence using different research methods. This implies Piaget's method may have underestimated infant competence. Number 4, cultural differences. Piaget believed stages were universal. However, culture influences reasoning, problem solving, development. Children from different societies may develop certain abilities at different ages. Example, Deson's research with indigenous Australian children found conservation developed later than in Piaget's Swiss sample. Spatial awareness developed earlier. This demonstrates that culture and experience influence cognitive development, even though the overall sequence of stages may remain similar. Underemphasis on social factors. Piaget emphasized individuals' discovery. Critics argue he underestimated parents, teachers, peers, language, culture. Then Lev Vygotsky particularly emphasized the importance of social interaction in learning. Then under emphasis on emotional factors, Piaget focused mainly on thinking. He gave relatively little attention to motivation, emotions, relationships, self-esteem. These are now recognized as important influences on learning. Summary of criticism. Piaget may have underestimated children, ignored cultural differences, paid insufficient attention to emotions, paid insufficient attention to social interaction, used small samples, relied on artificial tasks, proposed stages that are more flexible than originally described. Then, Piaget's legacy. Despite criticism, Piaget remains one of the most influential psychologists in history with several lasting contributions. He revolutionized child psychology. Before Piaget, children were often viewed as small adults. Piaget showed children think differently from adults. Their reasoning, changes systematically as they develop. He founded cognitive development research. Piaget was among the first psychologists to study cognitive development systematically. His work inspired decades of research. Then constructivism. Piaget laid the foundation for constructivist learning today. Main idea: learners actively construct knowledge. Teachers guide learning rather than simply delivering information. Then clinical method. Piaget developed the clinical interview method. Instead of only scoring right or wrong answers, he asked children to explain their thinking. This shifted attention from performance to reasoning processes. Neo-Piagetian theories. Neo-Piagetian theorists accepted Piaget's basic ideas but expanded them using findings from neuroscience, information processing, working, memory, cultural psychology. They argued that development depends on more than just stages. Then Joan Pascal Lyon. So his main idea: development depends partially on mental capacity. He called his M-space, that is mental space. M-space: as children grow, their working memory increases. This allows them to process more information simultaneously. Example: young children only notices the height of a glass. Older children considers both height and width, leading to correct conservation judgments. Then constructive operators. He also proposed mental tools that help children focus attention, manage conflicting ideas, build new cognitive structures. B. Robbie Case. Case agreed with Piaget with Robbie Case. Then Case agreed with Piaget but emphasized efficiency. As children mature, they use mental resources more efficiently. This frees working memory for more complex thinking. He also highlighted the role of brain development, such as myelination, in cognitive growth. Kurt W. Fisher. Fisher proposed dynamic skill theory. Main idea: development is not a single ladder. Instead, different skills develop at different rates depending on context, support, experience. Importance of scaffolding. Performance varies according to available support. Low support, child performs independently. High support, child performs better. Guided support, that is scaffolding, child may perform above their usual level. Development resembles a web of interconnected skills rather than a single staircase. Then Graham Halford. Halford proposed relational complexity theory. He argued that development depends on the number of relationships a child can understand simultaneously. Examples: binary relationship, the dog is bigger than the cat. Ternary relationship, 1 plus 3 equal to 4. Quaternary relationship, solving a multi-step algebraic expression. Children progress by understanding increasingly complex relationships across subjects. Then Andras Demetriou. Demetriou proposed that the mind has 3 interacting systems. 1. Specific structural systems. Knowledge areas such as mathematics, language, spatial thinking, social understanding. Then hypercognitive system. These involve thinking about thinking, metacognition, planning, self-reflection. Then 3, core processing capacities. Basic mental abilities such as attention, processing speed, working memory. He argued that all 3 systems improve with age and interact with each other, while also being influenced by culture and learning environment. Then we have number 5, impact on education. Piaget's theory continues to influence education worldwide. Examples include early childhood education, emphasis on play, exploration, sensory experiences. Child-centered teaching. Teachers act as facilitators. Students actively investigate and discover knowledge. Developmentally appropriate practice. Curricula should match children's developmental stages. It notes that these principles have influenced early childhood education policies internationally. The impact on parenting. Piaget's ideas also influence parenting. Parents are encouraged to provide stimulating environments, support curiosity, use age-appropriate play, set realistic expectations based on developmental stages. For example, understanding that a young child is still egocentric can help parents respond with patience rather than assuming intentional selfishness. Then quick revision, major criticism, artificial tax, small, non-representative samples underestimated children's ability, ignored cultural and emotional influences, overemphasized fixed stages. These are the major criticism. Then Piaget's lasting contribution. So his lasting contribution: pioneer of cognitive development research, founder of constructivist learning theory, introduced the clinical interview method, inspired child-centered education. Then neo-Piagetian theories. So the theorists then with their main contribution. So you have the Juan Pascal Leon. So his contribution is on the M space. So working memory or mental capacity. Then the Rubik case. He contributed in the area of efficient use of mental resources and brain development. Then the Kurt W. Fisher, dynamic skill theory, context and scaffolding. Then for the Graham Halford, his own is on relational complexity theory. Then Andres Damatrio, so his main contribution is on 3-layer model of cognition, structural systems, hypercognitive systems, core processing capacities. So that is a revision. Then parenting applications of Piaget's theory. Piaget's theory is valuable not only in education but also in parenting. Parents can use Piaget's stages to understand their children's thinking, have realistic developmental expectations, provide appropriate learning experiences, encourage curiosity and exploration. Then understanding developmental stages helps parents respond patiently to children's behavior instead of expecting adult-like reasoning. Then stage-based activities for parents. So for the sensory motor stage, that is from birth to 2 years. So recommended activities: pick up ball. Purpose is to develop object performance. Then texture exploration. So provide different materials: soft, rough, smooth, pumpy, and the purpose is to stimulate sensory development. Then sound bottles. Fill bottles with rice, beans, bells. So allow children to shake and compare sounds. The purpose is to develop auditory discrimination. Then operational stage, the stage from 2 to 7 years. So memory games. So picture matching cards. So the purpose is to improve memory and attention. Then you have also the role play. So examples: doctor, teacher, firefighter, shopkeeper, playing the role of these people. So the purpose is to develop symbolic thinking and imagination. Then story sequencing. Children arrange pictures in the correct story order. The purpose is to develop logical sequencing skills. Then concrete operational stage, that is the stage from 7 to 11 years. So the number line activities. Children jump along a floor number line to solve arithmetic problems. The purpose is to develop numerical reasoning. Then classification games. So group objects by size, color, shape. The purpose is to develop logical classification skills. Then we have logic games. So example is the Sudoku, logic puzzles, matching games. The purpose is to strengthen reasoning. Then we now have for the formal operational stage, that is from 11 years and above. So debates. Students discuss topics from different viewpoints. The purpose is to develop abstract reasoning. Then hypothesis testing. Children predict, investigate, test ideas. The purpose is to develop scientific thinking. Then strategy games such as chess, checkers, settlers of Catan. The purpose is to improve planning and forward thinking. Then comparison between Piaget and comparison between Piaget and Vygotsky. Both Piaget and Lev Vygotsky believe children actively construct knowledge, but they differed in how learning occurs. Similarities. Both believed children actively construct knowledge. Learning involves qualitative changes in thinking. Children are not passive learners. Then differences between Piaget and Vygotsky. Cognitive. So Piaget believed in cognitive constructivists, while Vygotsky believed on social constructivists. Then Piaget emphasized independent exploration, while Vygotsky emphasized social interaction. Then Piaget believed on universal developmental stages fixed. The universal developmental stage is fixed. Then while Vygotsky continuous developmental without stages. Then Piaget thought develops before language. So Piaget believed that thought develops before language, but Vygotsky says that language drives cognitive development. Then Piaget discovery learning, while Vygotsky believed on scaffolding within the zone of proximal development. Then teachers facilitate independent discovery according to Piaget, while Vygotsky says teachers provide guidance and support. Then the key ideas. Piaget believed that child is a little scientist. So learning occurs through exploration, experimentation, discovery. While Vygotsky, learning occurs through parents, teachers, peers, culture. Children learn best with guidance from more knowledgeable others. The zone of proximal development. The gap between what a child can do alone and what the child can achieve with guidance. So teachers provide scaffolding until the learner becomes independent. Remember, Piaget focused on discovery learning, while Vygotsky focused on scaffolding plus social interaction. So comparison between Piaget and Erikson. Erikson focused on psychosocial development, whereas Piaget focused on cognitive development. The similarities between both of them: both believe development occurs in stages. Early childhood is important. Each stage builds upon previous stages. Children actively participate in their own development. Then the differences between the Piaget and Erikson. So Piaget believe in cognitive development. Erikson believe in psychosocial development. Piaget believe in childhood to adolescence. Erikson believe in entire lifespan. Piaget focus on thinking. Erikson focus on personality and identity. Piaget cognitive conflict drives learning, while Erikson psychosocial crisis drive development. Then of course Piaget universal cognitive stages, while Erikson stages influenced by culture and society. So Erikson main idea: each stage presents a conflict. Examples include trust versus mistrust, initiative versus guilt, identity versus role confusion. Then successful resolution leads to healthy person develop. Successful resolution leads to healthy personality development. Then remember, Piaget asks, how do children think? While Erikson asks, who do children become? Let me take it again. Remember that Piaget asks, how do children think? While Erikson asks, who do children become? Then now let us now compare between Piaget and Uriel Bronfenbrenner. So Bronfenbrenner proposed ecological system theory. He believed development results from interactions between the child and multiple environmental systems. Similarities between both of them: both agreed children actively participate in development. The environment influences development. So now looking at the differences. So while under Piaget, the individual cognitive development occurs, while under Bronfenbrenner, environmental systems. Then under Piaget, developmental stages, while Bronfenbrenner says it's a lifelong ecological interactions. So then Piaget believe on schemas, while Bronfenbrenner believe on ecological systems. So Piaget says the discovery learning. Piaget is on discovery learning, while Bronfenbrenner is on contextual learning. Bronfenbrenner's 5 systems are microsystem, that is immediate environment, family, social, peers. Mesosystem, that is relationship between microsystems, example family, school interactions. Then exosystem, so exosystem is the indirect influence, that example parents, workplace, local services. Then macrosystem, so macrosystem is culture, religion, government, social values. Then also he has the chronosystem, that changes over time. Examples are divorce, relocation, technological change. Now remember, Piaget focused on how children think, while Bronfenbrenner focused on where children develop and how different environmental systems interact. Revision of the whole thing now. Cognitive development refers to changes in thinking, memory, attention, reasoning, language, problem solving, decision making. It is influenced by both genetic and environmental factors. Then schemas are mental structures that organize knowledge. Example, infant sucking schema, adult driving schema. Schemas become increasingly complex through experience. The relationship between verbal thought and concrete thought. Piaget believed children have both. Verbal thought, active, concrete thought. Piaget believed children have both verbal thought, then active, concrete thought. He cautioned that relying only on children's verbal answers may not accurately reflect their reasoning. Researchers should observe children's actions, manipulation of objects, explanations to gain a fuller understanding of cognition. Egocentrism and perspective taking. Pre-operational stage. Children struggle to understand another person's perspective. Example, 3 mountain stacks. Concrete operational stage. Children develop decentration. They can consider multiple viewpoints, understand other people's perspectives, think more logically about relationships. These shifts reflect both cognitive and social growth. The revision summary. Most important definitions, know this by heart. So, cognitive development, schema, adaptation, assimilation, accommodation, equilibrium, disequilibrium, equilibration, object performance, conservation, egocentrism, decentration, seriation, classification, reversibility, animism, artificialism, constructivism. So know the 4 stages of development, the 4 stages of Piaget development. So be able to state age range, characteristics, give examples, educational implications, then classroom activities. Then learn the comparison, be able to compare Piaget with Vygotsky and Eriscon and Brofena. They know at least 5 differences and 2 similarities for each comparison. So if you are writing an exam, this is a hint for you. Try to know them. Then know the major criticisms. Common exam points include small sample, artificial tax, underestimated children's abilities, ignore social factors, then rigid stage model. That is the major criticism about the Piaget theory. Know Piaget's contributions. Remember that Piaget revolutionized child psychology. He developed constructivism, introduced the clinical interview, influenced modern education, and inspired developmental psychology research. Also, learn the neo-Piagetian theorists. Know the main contributions of each of them. So, like you have the theorists, then their main contribution, as we studied earlier. The Joan Pascal-Lyon, his own is on M-space, mental capacity. Then Robbie Case, he focused on efficient information processing. Then Kurt Fischer focused on dynamic skill theory, while Graham Halford focused on relational complexity theory. And we have the Andres Demetrio, the 3 interacting cognitive system. So likely exam questions is based on emphasis. You should be prepared to answer questions such as explain Piaget's theory of cognitive development, discuss the 4 stages of cognitive development with relevant examples, explain assimilation, accommodation, and equilibration, describe object performance and conservation, discuss the educational implications of Piaget's theory, evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of Piaget's theory, compare Piaget's theory with Vygotsk's theory, and compare Piaget's theory with Erickson's psychological theory, and also compare Piaget's theory with Brinfreimner's ecological system theory. Then likewise, explain the influence of Piaget's theory on education and parenting. You should be also be able to discuss the contributions of neo-Piagetian theorists. Then explain why Piaget remains influential in developmental psychology despite criticism. Then the final takeaway, Piaget's theory remains one of the most influential frameworks for understanding children's cognitive development. The theory consistently emphasizes that children are active constructors of knowledge, progressing through identifiable patterns of thinking while interacting with their environment. Although later researchers have refined and challenged aspects of the theory, Piaget's concepts such as schemas, adaptation, object permanence, conservation, and stage-based cognitive development continue to shape education, parenting, and developmental psychology worldwide. So now I'm going to the quiz. Remember, for each now is the quiz time. So as usual, endeavor to give your own answer before you finally see the correct answer. So by that you evaluate yourself. So question 1. So choose the one best answer. Choose the one best answer. So question 1. Jean Piaget was a 1. Sociologist, B. European psychologist, then C. Swiss psychologist, and D. Philosopher. So your correct answer, quickly, the correct answer is Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist. That is option C, a Swiss psychologist. Question 2. Piaget is known for developing the theory of A. Moral development, B. Social learning, C. Personality development, and D. Cognitive development. Of course, Piaget is best known for developing the theory of cognitive development. That is option D. Question 3. According to Piaget, children are A. Passive learners, B. Active constructors of knowledge, C. Empty vessels, and D. Born with complete knowledge. Of course, the correct option, according to Piaget, children are active constructors of knowledge. That is option B. Question 4. Cognitive development refers to the development of thinking, A. Thinking and reasoning abilities, B. Emotional maturity, C. Physical strength, D. Personality traits. The correct option is cognitive development refers to the development of thinking and reasoning abilities. That is option A. Question 5. Piaget believed intelligence develops through A. Punishment, B. Maturation alone, C. Rewards, and D. Adaptation. Of course, Piaget believed that intelligence develops through adaptation. That is option D. Question 6. Mental frameworks used to organize knowledge are called A. Reflexes, B. Habits, C. Instincts, and D. Schemas. So, of course, the mental frameworks used to organize knowledge are called schemas. That is option D. Question 7. Which process involves fitting new information into existing schemas? A. Accommodation, B. Assimilation, C. Equilibrium, D. Organization. Of course, the process that involves fitting new information into existing schema is called assimilation. That is option B. Question 8. Accommodation occurs when A. Existing schemas remain unchanged, B. New information changes existing schemas, C. Children imitate adults, and then D. Children memorizes facts. Of course, accommodation occurs when new information changes existing schemas. That is option B. Question 9. Equilibrium refers to A. Mental balance, B. Physical balance, C. Mental conflict, and D. Emotional stability. Of course, equilibrium refers to mental balance. Question 10. Disequilibrium occurs when A. A child understands everything, B. Existing schemas cannot explain new experiences, C. Learning has ended, and D. A child forgets information. Of course, disequilibrium occurs when existing schemas cannot explain new experiences. That is option B. Question 11. Equilibration. Equilibration is the process of A. Forgetting information, B. Restoring cognitive balance, C. Memorizing facts, and D. Physical maturation. Of course, equilibration is the process of restoring cognitive balance. That is option B. Question 12. Piaget believed children learn best through A. Rote memorization, B. Passive listening, C. Observation only, D. Discovery learning. Then, of course, Piaget believed children learn best through discovery learning. That is option D. Question 13. Piaget described children as A. Empty vessels, B. Little scientists, C. Social imitators, and D. Adult thinkers. Of course, Piaget described children as little scientists. That is option B. Question 14. Which is not one of Piaget's invariant functions? A. Organization, B. Adaptation, C. Reinforcement, D. Both A and B are invariant functions. So the correct option is reinforcement. Question 15. According to Piaget, development occurs in A. Random stages, B. Universal stages, C. Cultural stages, D. Personality stages. Of course, according to Piaget, development occurs in universal stages. That is option B. Question 16. The sensory motor stage covers approximately 0 to 2 years, that is A, then B, 2 to 7 years, C, 7 to 11 years, and then D, 11 years and above. Of course, the sensory motor stage covers approximately 0 to 2 years. That is option A. Question 17. During the sensory stage, children mainly learn through A. Abstract reasoning, B. Their senses and actions, C. Reading, and D. Formal instruction. Of course, during sensory stage, children mainly learn through their senses and actions. That is option B. Question 18. Object performance refers to understanding that A. Objects change color, B. Objects continue to exist even when unseen, C. Objects disappear permanently, and D. Objects cannot move. Of course, object permanence refers to understanding that objects continue to exist even when unseen. That is option B. Then question 19. Which game best develops object performance? A. Chess, B. Peekaboo, C. Monopoly, and D. Sudoku. Of course, the game that best develops object performance is the Peekaboo, option B. Question 20. A baby repeatedly dropping a spoon demonstrates A. Trial and error learning, B. Abstract reasoning, C. Formal operations, and D. moral reasoning. Of course, a baby repeatedly dropping a spoon demonstrates trial and error learning. Question 21. Reflexes are most characteristics of which stage? A. Formal operational. B. Concrete operational. C. Sensory motor. And then D. Pre-operational. Of course, reflexes are most characteristics of sensory motor stage. That is option C. Then 22. Which of the following develops near the end of the sensory stage? A. Conservation. B. Ecocentrism. C. Abstract reasoning. And D. Object permanence. So of course, the one that develops near the end of the sensory stage is the object permanence. The object permanence. So question 23. The pre-operational stage covers approximately A. 2 to 7 years. B. Birth to 2 years. C. 7 to 11 years. And then D. 11 years to 18 years. Of course, the pre-operational stage covers approximately 2 to 7 years. Question 24. A major characteristic of the pre-operational stage is A. Conservation. B. Symbolic thinking. C. Formal logic. And D. Hypothetical reasoning. Of course, a major characteristic of the pre-operational stage is symbolic thinking. Then question 25. Egocentrism means A. Selfishness. B. Intelligence. C. Difficulty seeing another person's perspective. And then D. Self-reasoning. Of course, egocentrism means difficulty seeing another person's perspective. That is option C. Question 26. Piaget demonstrated egocentrism using the A. 3-mark stacks. B. Bobo doll experiment. C. Marshmallow test. And D. Strange situation. Of course, Piaget demonstrated the egocentrism using the 3 mountain tax. Question 27. A child believes a tall glass contains more water simply because it is taller. This demonstrates A. Reversibility. B. Conservation. C. Centration. And then D. Classification. Of course, a child believes a tall glass contains more water simply because it is taller. Demonstrates concentration. That is option C. Then question 28. Conservation refers to understanding that quantity remains constant despite changes in appearance. A. Then B. Water disappears. C. Object changes size. And then D. Numbers increase automatically. Of course, conservation refers to understanding that quantity remains constant despite changes in appearance. Question 29. Which ability is generally absent during the pre-operational stage? A. Symbolic play. B. Language development. C. Conservation. And D. Imagination. Of course, the ability that is generally absent during the pre-operational stage is conservation. Other ones are present. Question 30. Believing the sun follows you is an example of A. Conservation. B. Animism. C. Seriation. And D. Classification. Of course, believing the sun follows you is an example of animation. That is B. Question 31. Artificialism refers to believing A. Nature created everything. B. People created natural objects. C. Animals talk. Of course, artificialism refers to believing that people created natural objects. That is option B. Then question 32. Which is characteristics of intuitive thought? A. Logical scientific reasoning. B. Asking many why questions. C. Algebraic thinking. And D. Hypothesis testing. Of course, The characteristics of intuitive thought is asking many why questions. That is option B. Question 33. Role-playing mainly develops A. Symbolic thinking, B. Conservation, C. Abstract reasoning, and D. Reversibility. Of course, role-playing mainly develops A. Symbolic thinking. Then question 34. The concept operational stage covers approximately 0 to 2 years, A. Then B. 2 to 7 years, C. 7 to 11 years, and then D. 12 to 18 years. Of course, the concrete operational stage covers 7 to 11 years. 35. Children in concrete operational stage begin thinking A. Illogically, B. Logically about concrete situations, C. Only emotionally, and then D. Symbolically only. Children in concrete operational stage begin thinking logically about concrete situations. Option B. Then question 36. Which ability develops during concrete operational stage? A. Object permanence, B. Conservation, C. Animism, D. Reflexes. Of course, the ability that develops during the concrete operational stage is the conservation. That is option B. Then question 37. Reversibility means A. Forgetting information, B. Mentally reversing an action, C. Learning through imitation, and D. Symbolic play. Of course, reversibility means mentally reversing an action. That is option B. Question 38. Classification refers to A. Imagining stories, B. Grouping objects according to shared characteristics, C. Memorizing lists, and then D. Drawing pictures. Of course, classification refers to grouping objects according to shared characteristics. Question 39. Seriation. Seriation involves arranging objects A. randomly, B. alphabetically, C. by color only, and D. by size or order. Of course, seriation involves arranging objects by size or order. That is option D. Question 40. Egocentrism generally A. increases, B. remains unchanged, C. decreases, and D. disappears at birth. Of course, egocentrism generally decreases. That is option C. Question 41. Which activity best suits the concrete operational stage? A. Symbolic pretend play only, B. conservation experiments, C. pure philosophical debates, and D. reflex exercises. Of course, the activity that best suits the concrete operational stage is the conservation experiment. Question 42. Formal operational thinking begins approximately at A. birth, B. 2 years, C. 7 years, and D. 11 years. So when the formal operational thinking begins, so it actually begins approximately at 11 years. Question 43. The hallmark of formal operational thinking is A. abstract reasoning, B. reflexive behavior, C. animism, and D. egocentrism. Of course, the hallmark of formal operational thinking is abstract reasoning. Question 44. Scientific reasoning involves A. guessing, B. hypothesis testing, C. Pretending, and D. Memorization. Of course, scientific reasoning involves hypothesis testing. That is option B. Question 45. Which activity best develops formal operational thinking? A. Piaget. Then B. Building blocks. C. Debate. And D. Matching colors. Of course, the activity that best develops formal operational thinking is the debate. So question 46. Deductive reasoning means A. Moving from general principles to specific conclusions. B. Random guessing. C. Try and error only. And D. Memorizing answers. Of course, deductive reasoning means moving from general principles to specific conclusions. So from general, you now move to specific, conclude for everyone. Then for question 46, Piaget believed teachers should primarily act as A. Lecturers. B. Facilitators of learning. C. Strict disciplinarians. And D. Examiners. Of course, Piaget believed that teachers should primarily act as facilitators of learning. Question 48. Discovery learning encourages children to A. Memorize information. B. Learn by observation. C. Depend entirely on teachers. And D. Explore and discover knowledge. Of course, discovery learning encourages children to explore and discover knowledge. That is option D. Question 49. Piaget believed learning is best promoted through A. Passive listening. B. Active interaction with the environment. C. Watching television. And D. Punishment. Of course, Piaget believed learning is best promoted through active interaction with the environment. Then question 50. Which statement best summarizes Piaget's theory? A. Children simply absorb knowledge from adults. B. Intelligence is completely inherited. C. Children actively construct knowledge through interaction with their environment. And D. Learning occurs only in school. Of course, the statement that best summarizes Piaget's theory is that children actively construct knowledge through interactions with their environment. That is option C. Question 51. According to Piaget, teaching should primarily be based on the child's A. Cognitive development stage. B. Physical appearance. C. Gender. And D. Social class. Of course, according to Piaget, teaching should primarily be based on the child's cognitive development. That is cognitive developmental stage. That is option A. Question 52. Piaget believed learning is most effective when children A. Memorize facts. B. Only read textbooks. C. Copy the teachers. And D. Discover knowledge actively. Of course, Piaget believed learning is most effective when children discover knowledge actively. That is option D. 53. Teachers should introduce abstract concepts. A. Before concrete experiences. B. After concrete experiences. C. At birth. And D. Only in university. Of course, teachers should introduce abstract concepts after concrete experiences. Question 54. Which teaching approach best reflects Piaget's theory? Which teaching approach best reflects Piaget's theory? A. Lecture method. B. Drill and practice only. C. Discovery learning. And D. Rote memorization. Of course, the teaching approach that best reflects Piaget's theory is discovery learning. 55, question 55. According to Piaget, teachers should focus mainly on A, children's reasoning process, B, correct answers only, C, examination scores, and then D, homework completion. Of course, according to Piaget, teachers should focus mainly on children's reasoning process. That is option A. 56. Which classroom activity best reflects discovery learning? A, copying notes, B, listening silently, C, memorizing definitions, and D, conduct an experiment. Of course, the classroom activity that best reflects discovery learning is conducting an experiment. That is option D. Question 57. Piaget believed teachers should create situations that produce A, imitation, B, disequilibrium, C, competition only, and D, punishment. Of course, Piaget believed that teachers should create situations that produce disequilibrium. That is option B. Then question 58. Differentiated instruction recognizes that A, all children learn identically, B, age determines intelligence completely, C, intelligence never changes, and D, children develop at different rates. Of course, differentiated instruction recognizes that children develop at different rates. That is option D. Question 59. Children's natural curiosity should be A, ignored, B, discouraged, E, encouraged, and D, controlled completely. Of course, children's natural curiosity should be encouraged. That is option C, should be encouraged. For question 60 now, which teaching resource is most suitable for concrete operational learners? A, real objects, B, abstract symbols only, C, philosophical essays, and D, poetry only. So the teaching resource that is most suitable for concrete operational learners is real objects. That is option A. Then 61. Piaget primarily develops A, conservation, B, object permanence, C, abstract reasoning, and D, classification. Of course, Piaget primarily develops object permanence. Question 62. Role playing mainly develops A, symbolic thinking, B, formal logic, C, conservation, and D, seriation. Role playing mainly develops symbolic thinking. That is option A. 63. Question 63. Classification games mainly develop A, reflexives, B, logical reasoning, C, animism, and D, egocentrism. So of course, classification games mainly develops logical reasoning. Question 64. Debates are especially suitable for learners in the A, sensory motor stage, B, pre-operational stage, C, concrete operational stage, and D, formal operational stage. Of course, debates are especially suitable for learners in the formal operational stage. That is the last stage of development. Question 65. Hypothesis testing activities develop A, scientific reasoning, B, reflexes, C, symbolic play only, and D, object permanence. Of course, hypothesis testing activities develop scientific reasoning. That is option A. Question 66. The document emphasizes that cognitive development is also influenced by A, race and culture, B, language, C, gender, and then D, all of the above. of course, looking at all of them, let's see. So of course, the document emphasizes that cognitive development is also, that is, Piaget emphasizes that cognitive development is also influenced by all of the above. It's influenced by race and culture, it's influenced by language, and it's influenced by gender. So the correct option is D, all of the above. Question 67. Piaget's theory should be applied with A, cultural sensitivity, B, strict uniformity, C, no classroom adaptation, and D, punishment. Of course, Piaget's theory should be applied with cultural sensitivity. Question 68. According to the Piaget, stereotypes may affect children's A, self-confidence, B, classroom participation, then C, achievement, and then D, all of the above. Of course, according to the Piaget, that is according to the document, stereotypes may affect children's self-confidence, which of course, yes, it will affect children's self-confidence, but it will also affect children classroom participation, and of course it will also affect their achievement. So it's all of the above. So stereotypes may affect children's self-confidence, classroom participation, and achievement. So it will affect all of the above. That is option D. Question 69. Language differences may influence children's A, thinking, B, understanding, C, symbolic representation, and also D, all of the above. So language differences may influence children's thinking on this. Of course, it will influence all of the above. So it will influence their thinking as well. It will also influence their understanding and also symbolic representation. So the correct option is all of the above. Language differences influences all. So question 70. Teacher expectations may influence children's A, learning opportunities, B, confidence, C, academic performance, and D, all of the above. So teacher expectations may influence children's learning opportunities, which is true. It will also influence their confidence, of course. It will also influence their academic performance. So it will influence all of the above. So the correct option is all of the above. Question 71. One challenge is balancing. One challenge is balancing A, play and curriculum, B, homework and punishment, C, lectures and examinations, and then D, attendance and grading. Of course, one challenge is balancing play and curriculum. So one of the challenges is to balance play and curriculum. Question 71. Curriculum pressure may encourage teachers to A, delay learning, B, teach beyond children's developmental readiness, C, eliminate examinations, and D, ignore the syllabus. Of course, curriculum pressure may encourage teachers to teach beyond children's developmental readiness, where they are battling to complete the syllabus, the curriculum. Question 73. Piaget emphasized understanding children's A, grades, B, attendance, C, thinking processes, and D, behavior only. Of course, Piaget emphasized understanding children's thinking processes. That is option C. Question 74. Parents may mistakenly believe that A, play-based learning lacks academic value, B, play is educational, C, exploration improves learning, and D, discovery learning is effective. Of course, parents may mistakenly believe that play-based learning lacks academic value. So, question 75. One classroom challenge is A, learners develop at different rates, B, all learners develop identically, C, every learner reaches the same stage simultaneously, and D, intelligence never changes. Of course, one of the classroom challenge is that learners develop at different rates. So that is option A. Question 76. Children with special educational needs and development should receive A, standardized instruction only, B, individualized learning experiences, C, less challenging work, and D, no practical activities. Of course, children with special educational needs and development should receive individualized learning experiences. Question 77. Piaget's theory recommends using dash for many learners with special educational needs and development. A, abstract lectures, B, concrete materials, C, memorization only, and then D, examinations only. Of course, Piaget's theory recommends using concrete materials for many learners with special educational needs and development. So concrete materials are necessary. Question 78. Flexible assessment means A, one examination for everyone, B, multiple ways to demonstrate learning, C, no assessment, and D, oral test only. So of course, flexible assessment means multiple ways to demonstrate learning. Question 79. A strength-based approach focuses on A, weaknesses only, B, children's difficulties, then C, deficits only, and D, children's abilities. Of course, a strength-based approach focuses on children's abilities. So they learn according to their ability. Question 80. Supporting children with special educational needs and development may involve collaboration with A, occupational therapist, B, speech language pathologist, C, other specialists, and D, all of the above. Of course, supporting children with special educational needs may involve collaboration with, of course, it can involve collaboration with occupational therapists, and it also involve collaboration with speech language pathologists and also with other specialists. So it's all of the above. So supporting children with special needs involve occupational therapists, it involves speech language pathologists and other specialists. Question 81. According to Piaget, social media supports A, passive memorization, B, active knowledge construction, C, reflex development, and D, physical growth. And of course, according to Piaget, social media supports active knowledge construction. Question 82. Social media promotes A, collaboration, B, discussion, C, peer learning, and D, all of the above. Of course, looking at it, social media promotes collaboration. Yes, it does. It also promotes discussion. Yes, it also promotes learning, peer learning. So it's all of the above. Social media promotes all of them. Question 83. Digital learning encourages A, assimilation and accommodation, B, reflexives, C, animism, and D, egocentrism. Of course, digital learning encourages both assimilation and accommodation. Question 84. One challenge of using social media in education is A, classroom distraction, B, technological complexity, C, classroom management, of course, then D, all of the above. Now, looking at it, one challenge of using social media in education is classroom distraction. Yes, it can affect classroom. It can distract classroom. It can also has complexity on technology. Yes, and it also affects classroom management. So it will affect all of the above. So using of social media in education can cause classroom distraction, it can cause technological complexity, and as well classroom management. So all of the above, that is option D. Question 85. One criticism is that Piaget underestimated children's A. Physical growth, B. Cognitive abilities, C. Emotional intelligence and creativity. Of course, one criticism is that Piaget's understanding underestimates children's cognitive abilities. Question 86. Piaget's research relied heavily on A. Large international samples, B. Computer simulations, C. His own observations and interviews, and D. Online surveys. Of course, Piaget's research relied mainly on his own observation and the interviews. That is option C. Question 87. Critics argue that Piaget's tasks were often A. Too easy, B. Artificial, C. Impossible, and then D. Computerized. Of course, the critics argued that Piaget's tasks were often artificial. Question 88. Piaget has been criticized for paying insufficient attention to A. Social interaction, B. Culture, C. Emotion, and D. All of the above. Of course, looking at it, Piaget has been criticized for paying insufficient attention to, in fact, all of them: social interaction, culture, emotion. So it's all of the above. Question 89. Later research suggests development is often A. More continuous than Piaget proposed, B. Completely random, C. Entirely inherited, and D. Identical across cultures. Of course, later research suggests that development is often more continuous than Piaget proposed. That is option A. Question 90. Research indicates that all adults consistently achieve A. Sensory motor thinking, B. Formal operational thinking, C. Pre-operational thinking, and D. Reflex behavior. Of course, research indicates that not all adults consistently achieve formal operational thinking. So research indicates that not all adults consistently achieve formal operational thinking. Question 91. Piaget is regarded as a pioneer in A. Cognitive developmental psychology, B. Clinical medicine, C. Behavior modification, and D. Psychoanalysis. So of course, Piaget is regarded as a pioneer in cognitive developmental psychology. That is option A. Question 92. Piaget's theory forms the foundation of A. Constructivism, B. Behaviorism, C. Classical conditioning, and D. Psychoanalysis. Of course, Piaget's theory forms the foundation of constructivism. That is option A. Question 93. Joan Pascal Lyon introduced the concept of A. ZPD, B. M-space, C. Microsystem, and D. Identity crisis. Of course, Joan Pascal Lyon introduced the concept of M-space. 94. Robbie case emphasized improvements in A. Working memory efficiency, B. Reflexes, C. Personality, and D. Moral reasoning. Of course, Robbie case emphasized improvements in working memory efficiency. Question 95. Kurt Fischer proposed A. dynamic skill theory, B, social learning theory, C, moral development theory, and D, attachment theory. Of course, Kurt Fisher proposed dynamic skill theory. Dynamic skill theory. So why Robbie case emphasized improvements in working memory efficiency? John Paslow introduced the concept of M-space, while Kurt Fisher proposed the dynamic skill theory. Question 96. Graham Halford is associated with A, relational complexity theory, B, behaviorism, C, classical conditioning, and D, attachment theory. Of course, Graham Halford is associated with relational complexity theory. Question 97. Andres de Mathieu proposed A, 3 interacting cognitive systems, B, 8 psychological stages, C, social learning theory, then D, operant conditioning. Of course, Andres de Mathieu proposed the 3 interacting cognitive systems. Question 98. Unlike Piaget, Vygotsky emphasized the importance of A, reflexes, B, social interaction, C, conservation, and D, object permanence. Of course, unlike Piaget, Vygotsky emphasized the importance of social interaction. So Vygotsky emphasized the importance of social interaction. Then 99, question 99. Erikson primarily focused on A, psychosocial development, B, cognitive development, C, language acquisition, and D, information processing. Of course, Erikson primarily focused on the psychosocial development. Erikson is on psychosocial development. Question 100. Bronfenbrenner emphasized that development is influenced by A, multiple environmental systems, B, reflexes only, C, assimilation only, and D, conservation only. Of course, Bronfenbrenner emphasized that development is influenced by multiple environmental systems. That is question 100. So thank you. We've come to the end of this lesson. Thanks for staying all through. So I hope you evaluated yourselves. How many did you score out of 100? So if you are yet to hit the subscribe button, please kindly hit the subscribe button to enable you get our materials in real time. As soon as it is uploaded, YouTube notifies you, and the previously uploaded one will also be made available to your page. That is the essence of hitting the subscribe button. You can also like us, then comment. Let's know what you think about this work, and also share to your friends that would find value in it. So our next topic, we shall continue with theory of learning.